Good day, everybody. I hope that you are well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 5 English lesson on describing characters. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. All right. So before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password. And then we're going to select the subject of English Language Arts, grade 5. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of describing characters. All right. So our chapter is describing characters. Our subject is English Language Arts, grade 5. And the lessons that we're going to be focusing on under the chapter of describing characters is to show character emotions and traits and to use dialogues. So to use dialogues and actions. So to use actions and dialogues to understand characters. All right. So once again, our we the lessons is to show character, emotions, and traits, and we are also going to use actions and dialogues to understand the characters. Right. All right. So when it comes to describing characters, right, and then I think the first thing that we can think of is either a book or a play or yeah, something where there are characters in, right? So whether it's a story, any type of story, right? That is where we will find specific characters. So with any in any book or some act that people are doing, whether it is stand up or in movies, specific shows, there needs to be a character, right? Whether the characters are the form of animals, whether characters are in the form of trees, non-living things, living things, right? But there's always a character because that character will basically show and will basically tell you what is really happening, or we will be able to see through the character what the moral of the story or the moral of the whole act may be, right? All right. So a story, right? We say that we can find characters in stories, and a story, it usually shows what its characters are are like and how they feel, right? So whether it is a story, where it's a book that you're reading, whether it is a story, nowadays we have the audiobooks where you can listen to stories, right? Stories can even be on television where you can see the stories, right? But with a story, usually it shows what its characters are like or how they feel, right? And remember, I said that characters can either be in the form of a person, it can be in the form of a thing, right? Think of, um, let's say Transformers. I'm not sure if that's the only thing I can think of. Or let's think of that show with the cars, right? With the different types of cars, and it's basically the cars that are characters. They are talking amongst one another or to one another, right? So, which means that the characters can also be things like cars, right? Characters can be trees, because if you think of, I can't think of a movie now where you have characters as trees or characters as plants, right? But if you can think of any, then you may just let me know. But that can also be a form of a character. And with in a story, right, within a play, within a movie, right, a story usually shows what each characters are like and how they feel. All right, so when you write, then you need to try and use actions and dialogue to show these things about your character, right? So just try to imagine how you, if you let's say maybe your teacher were to tell you to write something about your character, right? Or you had to come up with your own story or own play where you had to maybe describe and write about a specific character. And usually when you need to describe or talk about a specific character, right? Then it means that you're gonna of course have to start writing it. So when you write about your character, then you need to try to use actions and dialogues to show these things about your characters. And remember, a dialogue is basically, it shows a conversation between two or more people, right? I know that most times we talk to ourselves. I do that a lot. um but that is not a dialogue, right? A dialogue is being between two or more people, right? Or two or more things. Because that basically shows conversation that is happening. That is a dialogue. It's conversation between two or more people, right? Or things. All right. So we also need to show the action that, let's say, the character is doing. So I'm not going to say people, I'm going to use characters, right? Because we say that the character can be anything. It can be a form of a thing. It can be a thing. It can be a person, or it can even be an animal, right? That is basically the characters. So when you write, then we need to use actions. We need to basically show what the character is doing, how the character behaves, and dialogue means that we need to basically show the conversation that these characters are having, right? And in doing so, right, writing about the actions as well as the dialogues, right, that shows things about their character, this will bring your character to life for the reader. Because, like I say, whether you are described, whether there are trees that is talking amongst each other, right, that is the character, and you will eventually bring that character to life. It's the same as if you're playing with dolls, if you're playing with cars, you're playing with something, you would basically have the two dolls in your hand and the one would be speaking to the other, right? You are eventually bringing life to those dolls by kind of showing as if you're having, these two are having a conversation between each other or amongst each other, right? So by basically when you write and you try to use action and dialogue to show things about your character, then it means that you are bringing your character to life for the reader, right? We won't even realize that it is, for example, trees talking or cars talking, right? Because of the action and the dialogue between the characters, right? That makes it seem as if there is literal life between those characters. All right, so now we're going to look at an example, right? So maybe you want to show that your character is embarrassed. So, for example, if you want to show that your character is embarrassed, right? So, if you want to show that your character is embarrassed, then we can, for example, say that Maya's face turned red and she ducked her head, right? So, which means that the reader will automatically be able to identify that Maya is either feeling embarrassed or she's feeling shy, right? Because usually when your face turns red and someone maybe ducks their head, then it's either showing that they are either shy or they're embarrassed, right? Or they just don't want the face to be shown, right? Another thing can be where we, for example, when it comes to dialogue, right? We can then, for example, say, did everyone see that? Right? That, and especially when it's in inverted commas, right? Remember, inverted commas means, especially when it comes to dialogue, then inverted commas means that somebody is directly saying something. It's not like where the narrator, who is the person writing the story, is, for example, saying that Maya does something. No, this is now where Maya is exactly, or somebody specifically saying something. So, say, for example, we have, let's say, a dialogue that looks something like this. Firstly, the inverted commas shows that the person is directly saying something, so which means that the character is speaking or saying something, right? Because that is what the inverted commas shows. Somebody is directly talking or directly saying something. And when they usually show things like, let's say, look at this, where it's like saying the word twice. It's like, did everyone see that? Right? That means that somebody is stuttering. Think of when somebody stutters, think of when you stutter, right? And then it's like, uh, uh, you know, you're stuttering sometimes because you're embarrassed. You stutter because you maybe don't know something. You stutter maybe because you are nervous, we are shy, right? There are many reasons as to why people are stuttering. But in this case, we know that Maya is stuttering because she's embarrassed. And we can say basically that, usually also when we say that your face turns red, like I say, it's either you're shy, you are blushing, or you're embarrassed, right? All right. And then it also, the next one says people often blush and they stutter when they are embarrassed, right? Because just think of a moment or think of an event or time when you were embarrassed, right? Think of what made you to be embarrassed, right? What is the event that took place, right? Why were you actually feeling embarrassed? What made you or who made you to feel embarrassed, right? And then think of how you felt when you were embarrassed. Do you think your face turned red also? As much as you cannot see yourself that your face turns red, but remember, when our face turns red, it's like sometimes it feels as if your face is warming up. Did you stutter? What really happened when you were specifically embarrassed? Sometimes when people are embarrassed, then they get angry, right? They don't turn red, nothing, they turn red with anger, right? So people often they blush and they stutter when they're embarrassed. They can even get angry when they're embarrassed, right? Some people become sad when they're embarrassed, then they start to cry, right? So there's many ways to show a character or to describe a character when either the character is embarrassed or when the character is hurt, right? Because if I get hurt, I might not express the same emotion as the next person. But either of these sentences would help to show that the reader, Maya, is, or basically to show how the reader, who is Maya, is feeling. All right. So remember, a story, it usually shows what its characters are like and it shows how the character is feeling. And like I say, you can basically, your character doesn't necessarily have to be people, right? Your character can also be animals. Think of is it Paw Patrol? Your character can be things, can be cars, it can be desks, it can be anything, right? That is basically your character. So basically, when it comes to stories, then it usually shows what its characters are like and how they feel. And when you try to write, right? When you write, then you need to try and use the actions to show what the characters are doing. And you need to show dialogue, right? Which is the conversation to show things about your character. And by doing so, when it comes to showing action and the dialogue, this will bring your character to life for the reader. All right, so now we're going to a+students.ca, and that is where we are going to continue with the chapter on describing characters. All right, so we are going to the first lesson, which is to show character emotions and traits. All right, so we said that when we write a story, then it usually, or within a story, then it usually shows its characters, what the characters are like, and how the characters are feeling. And when you write, think of when you were to write your own story, right? Try to use actions and dialogue to show that these things about your character, right? You need to show how they are feeling. You need to show what your characters are like. You need to show the action. And you need to basically there needs to be conversation, right? And remember, we said when it comes to dialogue, it needs to be a dialogue basically is a conversation between two characters or more, right? All right. So we're going to look at a few examples, right, of how characters are being described, right? Because now we're going to be showing the characters' emotions and the different traits of the characters, right? All right. All right. So we're going to look at at examples, right, of how we are showing character traits as well as the character's emotions. It says you are writing a story about Kylie, right? So now we're going to be looking at a specific scenario, right? It says that you are writing a story about Kylie who hears some bad news, right? We need to choose the best description to show that Kylie is disappointed. So it says you are writing a story about Kylie, right? Who hears bad news. Just try to think how you would feel if you were to get bad news. Just think of maybe you getting a report and it's not what you had expected. How would you feel? How would you feel emotionally, right? How do you think you would describe the disappointment that you'd be feeling? How would you actually, how would you basically feel and how would you basically react, you know, since you are basically disappointed by the bad report that you maybe got? Just think of that. All right. So when it comes to, say, for example, we were to write a story about Kylie, right? Who hears some bad news. We need to show the best description to show that Kylie is disappointed, right? So if we are writing, does it mean that Kylie swallows hard and tries to force herself to smile since she's been disappointed? Or it's a thing of saying, okay, Kylie said, continuing to chop the carrots. So if we were to basically describe and show how Kylie is feeling, right? Especially since she's been disappointed because she heard bad news, right? Then it means that Kylie swallowed hard and tried to force herself to smile. Because remember, if you're disappointed, and then it's going to be very hard for you to even try to smile, you're going to force a smile, right? Because deep down emotionally, you are hurt, right? Guys, do you want me to stop? Because it seems like I'm honestly talking alone. Thanks, guys. Guys, I honestly can stop and we can have this conversation about your report. I am really hoping and praying that all of you did very well. Um, if you want to, we can have this conversation about your reports. I honestly don't mind because it just feels like I am talking and nobody's listening, and we're talking about the report cards, which I am extremely happy for you guys and I'm hopeful. Let's hope there's no disappointments. So I don't mind. We can have a conversation about your reports. No, it's fine, guys. Honestly, I just know that I'm extremely happy for you. I am hopeful that all of you guys are going to get your A's like Prabha did, right? And the E for excellent. But I also need to I also need to basically teach you guys, or I need to continue. So even during the holidays when your summer break starts, we are still going to be teaching. We're still going to be having classes. That's if you guys are going to be attending. All right. So I'm going to continue, right? It's almost we literally have 15 minutes left and then we will be done with the session, right? Only 15 minutes left. All right? And guys, don't feel bad, honestly. But I just needed to know if we are talking about the results or we are talking about characters. Thank you. All right, so we are talking about show you about describing characters, right? And think of stories, think about books, think of any forms of stories where you'll find characters in, right? And I said characters can either be people, characters can be living and non-living things, characters can be things, characters can be trees, it can be literally anything because at the end of the day you need to put life to your characters, right? And the only way in order for you to put life or bring life to your character is through showing what your characters are like and showing how your characters feel, right? So when you are think of you having to maybe write your own story, having to write your own book, right? Then it means that you're going to have to try and use actions and dialogues to show how your characters feel or how your characters behave or how your characters are like. And like I say, characters doesn't even have to be in the form of people. It can be literally anything. And I made an example of um is it Paw Patrol, right? Um I think it's dogs only or mainly dogs, right? Who's talking amongst each other, right? Which means that those characters were brought to life by showing the interaction, showing the dialogues that they are having, showing the behaviors, and even showing that animals can also show emotions. And that's the same with people, right? Because remember, when it comes to characters, the name character is given because it doesn't necessarily just have to be people. Because remember, when it also comes to kids, especially younger kids, they find more joy or fun in, let's say, their toys coming to life. Think of Garfield, think of Woody, um, literally all of your characters that with these movies now, and there's also toys. The same with Barbie, right? The movie Barbie. It's basically where toys are coming to life and you're bringing life to characters, right? So when it comes to characters and when it comes to you writing a story, then a story will usually show what the characters are like, and a story will show how the characters feel. So when you write the story, then you need to show what the characters are like. You need to show how the characters feel in the forms of using action, using dialogue, right? And we said dialogue is basically a conversation between two or more characters. And I made an example where I said that as much as we sometimes talk to ourselves, but you cannot have dialogue with yourself, right? You need to basically have dialogue or show a form of dialogue between you and somebody else or between you and something else, right? And usually, when it also comes to characters, right, and showing the characters' emotions and showing the traits of the characters, right, then sometimes your emotions and your traits could even shows it can show happiness, it can show somebody sad, it can show disappointment, it can show embarrassment, it can show where somebody or something is angry, right? And usually, when we are showing any form of those emotions or traits, right, then there's usually a description that goes with it. Instead of us just showing or saying that I am embarrassed or I'm disappointed, my face will show it, right? Or instead of just showing or saying that I'm angry, you'll sometimes maybe see that I'm angry, or you'll maybe hear it in the tone of my voice that I'm angry, right? So think of maybe you doing something to your friend or to somebody and they express some form of emotion, right? Then they will show some form of emotions based on what you can see, but also based on the tone of their voice, right? So that basically shows emotions, and that is why we say when it comes to a story, then it shows what the characters are like, and it also shows how the characters feel in any story, whether it is also a story or in real life. We need to show how the person is feeling, right? So even with you guys getting your results soon, getting your report card soon, there's either going to be excitement or there's going to be disappointment, right? But there's going to be some form of emotion that goes with you getting your report card. Maybe before you get your report card, for those of you still going to get it, right? So maybe before getting your report card, you'll feel some form of, um, how can I say, you may be feeling nervous, you're feeling anxious, right? Because you don't know what to expect. But now, once you get your report and you open up the report, then there's going to be a different type of emotions. It's either going to be sadness, or it's going to be excitement, it's going to be happiness, or it can be disappointment, embarrassment. It will depend on what your report card shows, right? All right, so we are now going to go to our test, right? Where we're going to show the character's emotions and traits. And I think they're going to be giving us a scenario where we are going to even have to write a story about maybe a person or a character, right? And then we're going to have to describe or give a description about how that person had felt. All right. So now let's go to our test. Okay, so we're going to look at a scenario, right? And then we are going to choose the best description to show how the person is feeling. So it says, you are writing a story about Eva, who is a new student. Choose the best description to show that Eva is shy, right? So we need to choose the best description to show that Eva is shy since Eva is a new student, right? Is it option one, where it says that Eva glanced at her clock? Eva glanced at her clock. How was it not even noon yet? Sighing, she rested her head on the desk. Or is it option two, where Eva buried her hands in her pockets and fixed her eyes on the floor? So is it option one or option two? All right. So if we were to choose the correct option, right? So to show that someone is shy, right? Then we can say that she buried her hands in her pockets and fixed her eyes on the floor. All right. So option one is correct because remember, she's shy. She doesn't even want to look at anybody. Just know she's gonna have to have a conversation, and she don't know how to start the conversation, right? And that is how we behave. I also did the same thing. Usually, when you start either a new school, new job, right? We have a sense of shyness. All right. The next one says you are writing a story about Cora, who is hiking in the mountains. Choose the best description to show that Cora is strong. So you're writing a story about Cora who is hiking in the mountains. Choose the best description to show that Cora is strong. Does it show option one, that Cora was sweating under the heavy load of her pack, but she continued to hike? Or is it option two, Cora stopped to rest again, setting her pack on the ground? This is too hard, she said. So option one or option two. All right. So if we were to show that Kara is strong, like especially since she's hiking up the mountain, then yes, we can say Kara was sweating under the heavy load of a pack, but she continued option one. Now, like how Prabha was adding that she showed strength and perseverance, right? She showed that she's not giving up, she's not going to stop, she's going to continue. And that is what we need to do, especially when we feel like something is too hard, or we feel like we are going nowhere, or we feel like we want to stop and we don't want to end something. At least try, right? It shows perseverance and it shows strength. All right, the next one says you are writing a story about Russell, who is choosing a new puppy. Choose the best description to show that Russell is certain, right? That he's certain that this puppy that I'm choosing, it's the right one. Is it option one, where it says when Russell saw the puppy, he said, "I'm going to name him Rusty." Or when option two that says Russell drew back when he saw the puppy fiddling with the buttons of his coat. So, what option showed that Russell was sure and certain that this is going to be the puppy that he's going to choose? All right, so we will choose option one, right? Because option one says when Russell saw the puppy, he said, "I am going to name him Rusty," right? He was sure that this is the one, right? He was certain that this is the puppy that I'm choosing, right? And yes, it shows ownership. He is owning this puppy, he's taking this puppy home, right? There's no word about that, right? So well done. Option one is correct. Let's do the last one. One more, and then we are done with our class. It says you're writing a story about Janelle, who is staying at a friend's cabin. Choose the best description to show that Janelle is content. So she's staying in a friend's cabin, right? Or at the friend's cabin. You need to choose the best description to show that Janelle is content with living where she's living. It says option one, Janelle zipped up her coat and pulled the gloves on. Brrr, it looks ugly out there, she said with a shiver. Or is it option two, where she said, Janelle gazed into the fireplace and pressed her feet into the thick carpet. It's so nice and warm in here, she said. Don't worry, Prabha, you're doing very well. I know what you mean. All right, so if we were to choose the correct one, then most definitely we would go with option two, right? Where we say Janelle gazed into the fireplace and pressed her feet into the thick carpet. It's so nice and warm in here, she said, right? Yes, and it shows that she's grateful for what she has, right? And it also makes her feel at home, right? She's comfortable, she's at home, she's feeling warm, right? She's not complaining, right? So that is what and also the fact that she appreciates getting the place, right? So option two is correct. So well done, everybody. All right, so we're going to stop just there, right? In our next lesson, we are going to continue with describing characters, and then we'll do the second lesson, which is to use actions and dialogues to understand characters. But now we've come to the end of our lesson where we describe characters. And remember, we said that a character can either be a person, an animal, can be things, right? And when it comes to describing characters, then we need to show what the characters is like are like, or what the characters are doing. We need to show the emotions of the characters, and you need to basically bring life to the character by showing actions and dialogue. So thank you very much everybody for joining the class. Once again, good luck to those who needs to get their report cards. Really wishing and hoping and praying for excellent results. Hard work definitely pays off. And for those of you who got your reports already, I'm sure that you are happy, you're ecstatic, and just hoping that you are pleased with what you have gotten. And if you're not happy and you're disappointed, then definitely next time you can try again. But for now, have a good day further. And then until next time, goodbye. No problem, guys. No problem.